Hey there, in this module we're going to go over how to fulfill an inventory request as an admin in Beacon. So first we're going to go to movements and then we'll go to requests. Here's where we can view all of our requests. If we receive a notification, you can find the request here in your notifications and click view to go directly to it, or you could have opened it from the list. So what we'll see here is the list of inventory that was requested. You can see all of the request information. If you want, you can download a pick list of the requested items. That'll help you go actually fill the order in the warehouse. You can view the shipping info. We got tracking info in here sometimes. But yeah, as a person fulfilling the request, one thing you might want to do is review the inventory position of the user who's requesting this inventory. So take down the request ID. So this is inventory request 316. I'm going to head over to my reports, go to movement, and you can check the field inventory optimization and utilization for request fulfillment report. This allows you to take a look at the request and what's being requested versus, what's actually there already and, how often this inventory is moving. If you want, you can filter by who requested it. Filter things down here. Make sure to click the refresh button to apply your filter. But here in the report, you can see we have a lot of stats about the open requests. But locate the request in question by the request ID. So here we see that on the left. And you can start getting into, the inventory items that were requested, how much is available, of various lots in different locations, and really narrow down, who needs what. And is this inventory request valid? Should you fulfill it? So do that work and determine what you are going to send to this user. Then head back to the inventory request. So one thing you'll want to do when you're working on a request is click the request claimed or in progress checkbox. This will let everyone else know that you're working on this request and that no one gets into this request while you're working on it and duplicate or mess up your work. So always pay attention to that checkbox when you're going into a request. And then next, you want to click Select Inventory. And as we're fulfilling inventory, what we're doing is really building a transfer. So they requested inventory, we transfer it to them. But the system treats it as a fulfillment so that we can tie the transfer and the request together. So select whose custody you're going to be pulling the inventory from. Most often it's going to be the organization. And then the recipient will be the user who requested it. But if you need to change it to, for instance, the distributor, then you can do that here. X them out, select the right user. Click Next. Here we're going to be selecting the items that we want to send. So this looks a little bit different than the normal inventory screens because we have this Requested tab. This is showing us the items that were actually requested. And if you want, you can click Search, and it'll automatically search for the catalog number that was requested and show you the available lots in the custody that you selected in the last screen. So you can select things that way. Just like if you're in a case, they'll get added to the Selected tab where you can modify the quantity. Head on back to the Search tab to search for a new item. Or if you need to reference again what was actually requested, head back to the Requested tab. The one thing to understand here is that the Requested tab is just for reference. It's informational. Nothing is controlling what you select. So you as the admin are ultimately responsible for what you are going to fulfill on this request. The system will not force you to fulfill what was requested. So go ahead and search through the things that you need here. Change the quantities if you need to. Make sure you click Select, and then on the Selected tab, they'll be added. So click Next once you have everything fulfilled that you want to send. Just like a transfer, you can fill out the additional options here. If you need to associate it with an event, set a due back date, associate it with a location, add tags. These are all options available to you here on the transfer portion of the fulfillment. And then click Done. And so the options you have are to fulfill or partially fulfill this request. If for some reason you think you might fulfill this request again, So a situation where like maybe there's a back order, you don't have enough inventory to do the fulfillment, you can say partial fulfillment so that you can return to it at a later date. However, if you are fulfilling everything and that request will not get returned to ever, no chance, just click fulfill. That'll complete the request so that you don't have to worry about it in the future. So here on the inventory request, you'll see our status has changed to fulfilled. In the fulfillment section, we can see all of the inventory that was fulfilled on the transfer and even a link to the transfer. So we can go and jump straight there if we want to. So the cool thing about, inventory movement in Beacon is how we link everything together. So this transfer, as you can see, is linked to the request from which it was born. And then the request here is also linked to the event from which it came. And you can jump to each one just by clicking on the links. So pretty sweet audit trail there, if I don't say so myself. But let's head back over to the requests because we have a few more things to look at. So I'm going to find us another good open request. And what I want to note for you here is the partial or none shipped box. So when you're fulfilling this and an inventory item doesn't get shipped out, you can check this box in order to let them know what didn't get transferred. So I'll select some inventory. I'm just going to breeze through this real quickly. So I'm going to select some inventory that was not requested. And I will this time select to partially fulfill. So I'm intentionally not selecting the item that was requested, and I'm instead fulfilling with some other inventory items that they didn't want, just to set up this example for us. So we said that they aren't getting the item that they needed, and if I want, I can enter a reason why. So we'll tell them that it's back ordered and 0 were shipped. We'll click save. And now if I go to the transfer for the fulfillment and pull the packing slip, it'll let me include the partial or not shipped items. So I'm going to download that and then I'll show you what it looks like. All right, so this is what a packing slip looks like. And you can see because we checked that box and then selected the option to include the partial or not shipped items, when the user receives this packing slip in their shipment, they'll be able to see the 3 items that you sent them. And then you'll also see the item that they requested didn't get sent, and they'll know why. So this is a great way to include extra context if you're not fulfilling an item for a user. Make sure that they aren't just wondering what happened, and reduces the need for extra communication. So that is how you can fulfill a request as an admin in Beacon. It also is how you can partially fulfill a request. So if you have a partially fulfilled request like this one, and you need to do a subsequent request, just return to that request screen and click Select Inventory again, and it'll prompt you to create another transfer. And all those transfers will be linked to this request down here in the fulfillment section. But if for some reason you are not going to return to this request and fulfill it again, it just is what it is, then feel free to click Complete and it'll close the request out. All right, so one more thing to show you. I'll open up a request here. Here we are on an open request. And if for some reason you fulfilled this request with a transfer on your own, not the normal way, or maybe someone else transferred inventory to this user, or they have since received a shipment, but before they did the request, but they didn't know it, any sort of moving pieces like that, where a transfer occurred without the request, you can assign the transfer to the request. So here in the More menu, I can click Assign Transfers and select any of these existing transfers to connect to this request and treat as a fulfillment. So if you assign a transfer to a request, it'll show up here in the fulfillment section and create that linkage for you there. So if for some reason something gets fulfilled on its own, so if for some reason the workflow doesn't, flow as normal, you can still take care of that. So that is how you can fulfill inventory requests, partially fulfill, and even assign transfers after the fact. Tune into our next training module to learn more.